just stay fired up. And I think we clinician leaders have to have some spine and some fire in the belly and some real sense of purpose to inject ourselves in as many of those key decisions as we possibly can.
Hey everyone, welcome to Leadership Rounds, a podcast shining a spotlight on exceptional clinician executives thriving and driving innovation at the intersection of business and healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Reena Pandey, and together we'll explore the wisdom and insights of great healthcare executives and craft a prescription for leadership success, one candid conversation at a time. Will, it is such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining. As you know, I have put this little show together to highlight spectacular clinician executives and to really be able to show the universe how people like you and others can thrive at the intersection of business and clinical and policy and. So it's such a treat to have you join. You and I have, I think, this shared sentiment that we've probably missed out on 15 to 20 years of friendship by only just getting to know one another. So here's to the next 15 to 20 years together, but I'm thrilled that you were able to join me.
Humbled and flattered that you invited me to join you here. So thank you.
And humbled and flattered that you said yes. So thank you.
What a treat. What a treat.
So it'll be a fun conversation. So I want to just jump in and hear your career journey. You've had such an interesting ride from academia at the outset to policy in the government to payer to provider to venture, and now being an entrepreneur yourself and feeling the roller coaster ride of being in the trenches and building your own company. So tell us the story. I'm sure people would love to hear it, how you made all those leaps and transitions from one thing to the other.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Reena. I would say that, first of all, it was rather unplanned and unintentional. I think if you had asked me when you and I were working at the same institution in Boston what I'd be doing in 25 years, I would have had very low likelihood of predicting with any real accuracy a number of the career decisions, largely because none of them were on my radar screen and none of them were part of the original plan. The plan was I was really happily a researcher and a clinician at Brigham and Women's Hospital. I was a researcher in the division of pharmacoepidemiology and pharmacoeconomics, which is a mouthful, focused on improving access, affordability, adherence to medications, and perfectly excited, enthusiastic, and challenged by it. Really loved that environment, and kind of personally got pulled out of that comfort zone by my incredible wife, who took a job in Washington, D.C. and moved us to D.C. She came to work in the Obama administration, and we moved here to DC. I was commuting back and forth to Boston. We had our second kid, and it was clear that we needed kind of a new plan to make this whole thing work. And that it took us out of our comfort zone, took me out of my comfort zone, and sort of forced me to think differently. It was a really unique time. It was when the Affordable Care Act had just passed, and the Innovation Center was just being stood up. So it was fortuitous to some extent that I just happened to be there at that point, and was able to step in and take a really cool role at the Innovation Center, leading the evaluation group at the Innovation Center when it first started. But frankly, were it not for the fortuitiveness, I don't know if that's a word. I think I just made it up. Yeah, but that is.
I'll help you. Don't worry.
Please, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, but I kind of fell into that, but as a result, it did make me realize that, I learned more in my first couple of months working in the government than I had in the last X number of months working in academia, because I kind of had started to figure it out a little bit, and it really, that was the frame shift that I personally needed to realize that I was not meant to spend 20 or 30 years in a single role and doing the same thing, that I thrive on, and I really, really get energy from learning and putting myself in new positions and frankly, taking myself out of my comfort zone. And I think that for me was like the most important learning. That's where I belong. I belong not just in the same role indefinitely or in, sort of rising through a single organization, but kind of moving around and getting exposed to different sides of the industry. So I did that for a couple of years.
Yep. Well, you could have, let me just pause you from that first leap, right? Like you could have, in the forced move to the DC area, looked for a job at Hopkins or Georgetown or something like that, right? That was picking up, your prior work in pharmacoepidemiology. I got the big word right, at the Brigham, but you chose not to, right? Like you chose to take a leap in that moment, right? So had you recognized before you stepped out that like, this is maybe different is the path for me and a new learning adventure would be the right step?
I'm not sure I did. I feel like I probably thought that I'm now storytelling, and I don't know if this is actually where my head was, but I probably thought this was a pretty unique moment because the Affordable Care Act just passed. It felt like a really defining moment for our healthcare system, and it seemed like the moment that if I'm in DC, I should probably try to roll up my sleeves and be part of the solution. But I don't think when I went into the government, I thought I was going to like have a really meaningful career change. I think I thought I'd probably go back to academia. And then I think I just learned when I was in the government. First, I learned that, some of the work that I thought was so important that I had done in academia that I was like, oh, these guys should really influence policy or influence decision making. It's less around, a lot of it's around how you take that information and actually influence people. And I also just learned that like I just got so much energy from being part of the sort of the action around trying to solve problems rather than just trying to describe solutions that you spend more of your time.
That sentiment resonates.
Felt like I just had to make a good run at it. So
yeah,
I redirected myself.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting lesson, right, for people to just be open to change and open to opportunities as they present themselves, right? And not necessarily be fixed in thinking about what the next step in the path of your career would be.
I think that's right, Rena. I think that actually, and we've also, many of our colleagues have gone and worked in the government and then came back and worked back in academia and loved it. And that transition in and out of academia and the government can be a really rich one where you're training the next generation of those who are going to have impact. So it really is about finding like where your energy is greatest and where you get the most fire in the belly.
Yeah. I ask that question a lot about energy and fire, right? Like what brings you energy? What are you great at on the one hand, but what brings you energy? And ideally they're the same thing, but they aren't always. And being very honest and self-aware about like what things interest you and what really brings you energy, I think is key. I don't think enough people ask themselves that question. So I think that's right. So sorry, I'm interrupting you. So you get to the government. You get to the Obama administration.
Had an incredible 2 years. I absolutely loved it. I felt really challenged and really motivated because there was this sense that anything was possible. And we were sort of on the front end of something really, really hard and really difficult, but really exciting. My biggest funder when I was in academia was CVS. And I'd done a lot of work with CVS as we had started a research center together, the CVS Harvard Center for Improving Medication Adherence. And frankly, some of it was like real world constraints of having a family and two people in the government and trying to figure out how to make everything work. I left the federal government, went to work at CVS to actually build on a lot of the stuff I'd been doing in the government, helping CVS leverage retail pharmacies, minute clinics, their clinical assets to try to partner with risk-bearing health systems, ACOs, to try to sort of be a community-based partner in the management of population health, improving, sort of leveraging both the physical and so all the assets that a CVS has to try to sort of better. And it really built a lot on sort of the work at the Innovation Center, that momentum towards value-based care and towards population health management that we'd been part of, and was awesome because we also worked with a bunch of old friends that you and I had actually worked with at the Brigham, and folks that I had worked with as a researcher, and felt like there was really, really great synergies there.
So in that era, just to remind folks, actually, like now we think of CVS as a healthcare company. When you went there, it was a retail company at a PBM, right? I mean, it wasn't that. I think you and Troy and others really injected a DNA of being a healthcare company and being a provider and deliverer of care. But yeah, remind us in that era when you went there, what was the DNA of the organization? And I don't remember it being a healthcare company back then.
Well, at the time, you're right. I think, first of all, it's generous of you to say that, me and Troy, as if, but thank you. I'll take that. And it was, the organization, it's a pretty extraordinary organization, really, really great leadership team. But when I got there, it was shortly after the merger between CVS, a retail organization, and Caremark, a PBM. They did have a retail clinic that was nurse led, and had a very narrow sort of set of clinical teams.
So that existed then already. Yeah.
However, I mean, it was at the time they were selling cigarettes. There was a bunch of it looked incredibly different than it does today. It did not have this sort of healthcare company feel to it. And that was a cultural change. The decision to stop selling cigarettes was really a central one to be able to do that and sort of say, hey, we are going to just buckle down and define who we are. And we're not going to try to put our feet in both canoes here. We're going to actually really march at this health thing. And it's clearly been a really defining moment for the company.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like in that era, actually? That with that decision getting made, I mean, this is like clinical leadership at its finest, right? For you guys to stand up and say to a retail organization, we should stop selling X that has such a huge public health impact. I mean, I can't think of a better example of, well, there are other examples, but this is like one of the top examples.
Really an example.
I mean, what was that like? And I mean, the kind of conviction you guys had to have to push for that change must have been.
I mean, again, I'm not taking any responsibility for this.
We'll give Troy most of the credit and you some. How's that?
But it was interesting. We did some research work that really highlighted the fact that it was hard to, there were inconsistencies, a retail pharmacy and selling cigarettes that, somewhere between 5 and 7% of patients that were going in and filling prescriptions for COPD meds, for asthma, for cardiovascular meds, were buying cigarettes on the same visit.
It's wild. Not surprising, by the way, but really kind of sad and wild to think about.
And at the moment that we were kind of going out and being a healthcare partner to risk-bearing health systems, it just felt like a true inconsistency. But for what it's worth, it's a huge publicly traded company, and the leadership of that company got behind a vision that says the company has a bigger role to play and has an opportunity to have a bigger impact. It was a compelling business story, but it was also really driven by a sense of mission. And I think it was a really powerful moment for every associate at that company to feel like they were part of something that was really bigger. We did actually some research afterwards to look at regional impact of places where there were CVS retail pharmacies, and before and after the decision to stop selling cigarettes, it had an impact on actual overall cigarette sales in those regions. There was spillover effect.
So there wasn't just that people went to find cigarettes at other stores, non-CVS stores, like the entire use of cigarettes in that region went down. That's fascinating.
It was powerful. And my personal story that's my favorite is that about a week before that big decision, I was with my then 6-year-old daughter, she's now 18, at a CVS. We were buying a granola bar. She was hungry. And we're at the counter and she saw the cigarette. She goes, "Dad, you're a doctor. You work at CVS. What is going on here? This doesn't seem like it's right." And I was like, "Well, I understand where you're coming from."
Your
she goes,
6-year-old said this?
So she says to me, "You should tell your boss, Troy." So I said, "Oh, that's a good idea. I will do that." And then a week later, when it happened, it was like got a lot of news, right? It was on the front page of all the newspapers, and I showed her the front page. At that point, she wasn't even reading like adult newspapers, so she kind of took her a little while to figure out what the article said. She's like, "Oh, you told Troy," and then she proceeds to go to school and tells the entire school that she told her dad, and her dad told his boss, and now CVS doesn't sell cigarettes. So she took full responsibility.
That's amazing. She gave you all the credit. I absolutely love it. All right. Well, see, clearly you had a huge impact on this. Amazing. Yeah, I think that is, it feels now long ago, and I think people have forgotten, but it was an extraordinary moment for this public health in a private company. The impact that a private company could have on public health broadly. Just extraordinary. Yeah, for sure. Well, keep going. So you're at CVS for 10.
I love it. I love it. It's great. Then frankly, an opportunity came to me to be the chief medical officer of the health plan at UPMC. UPMC is a pretty unique place because it's a huge health plan and a huge health system. And having spent time at the Innovation Center and thinking hard about how payers and providers work better together and how to create better payment systems, it was sort of it's the best laboratory. Those types of environments where you have a payer and a provider are the best laboratory to actually get everybody on the same side of the table to say, all right, how do we actually do it better together? It's not your money versus my money. It's our money. And that was a dream, frankly. The chance to work with some of the most it's a great academic medical center. There's incredible providers that are really, really deeply focused on managing the health of like a region because they are such a dominant player in Western Pennsylvania. It created all kinds of really, really interesting opportunities to test strategies, test approaches to really fundamentally change the way you pay for stuff and the way you integrate payer and provider to drive better care, better experience, better outcomes, lower costs. So it was sort of like a no-brainer to be able to try that. And frankly, from I think the arena question would be around like, well, like how do you decide to make a move like that? Because you're at a big company, and frankly, like it just seemed like the kind of opportunity if you're sitting at the table and you can like bring all of these assets together, try to actually solve really important regional healthcare problems. Just felt like a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity.
I get it. I mean, leaving CVS seems wild, but on the other hand, the organization at that point didn't have an Aetna, so there was the PBM side, but not the health plan side. So the opportunity to actually be a direct care delivery organization and payer, I can see those were like there are two things that weren't necessarily present in your CVS experience that are the ways that people get care and get paid for care. So, have the opportunity to mix those two and have impact there makes quite logical sense. Though the CVS brand to UPMC might not be a shift people would think you'd make, but that makes a lot of sense actually in retrospect.
Yeah. It was super fun. So then the next move was to Humana, where the role is to be the chief medical officer of Humana. Humana is largely in the government space and increasingly building primary care and home-based care integrated set of businesses. And again, that felt like an opportunity to both integrate both payment and delivery, but less around hospital and more around community, which frankly is almost the intersection of like the CVS opportunity. How do you leverage retail pharmacies and MinuteClinics with risk-bearing health systems? This was really around like how do you actually create that sort of community-based infrastructure to be able to deliver better population health outcomes? How do you integrate primary care, payment reform with owned or non-owned primary care, better home care, better care management with a payment system where you're fully capitated for either Medicare or Medicaid or both, and responsible for that population. So again, a really, really novel opportunity to grow and to try a different kind of environment. Also, an opportunity personally to go from regional to national, and a much bigger, sort of broader playing field in terms of the complexity, the management complexity, and sort of how to work within a matrix.
Yeah, super. And then you leave Humana, step aside for a bit, and step into the venture world. So another pivot, interestingly, in your career.
Yeah, that was a little bit driven by, there are sort of some limitations of what you can and can't do when you leave a big company.
Yes.
So playing an advisory role is awesome, and you learn a ton, and it's a great opportunity to stay fresh and sort of get a ton of exposure. But through my career, I've always been really focused on this issue of access, affordability, appropriate use of medications, and it's sort of the breaking point when it comes to these new, unbelievably, sort of transformative therapies, cell and gene therapies that can cure conditions that, Rena, when you and I went to medical school, we never would have imagined were curable.
Absolutely.
But they cost $3 or $4 million, and we really don't have the system to sort of figure out how to pay it for and deliver them. So it just felt like this was that kind of really tricky, challenging problem that would be fun to run at and try to figure out we need disruption in the space to be able to solve. I felt like the chance to try to do something crazy.
I mean, it goes all the way back full cycle to your roots at the Brigham and Jerry Avorn's group in pharmacoepidemiology, right? Like, I can't say that word, pharmacoepidemiology. It pulls the whole thread full circle for you, which is kind of neat to see the entire arc of your career play out. And so now, like, you've gone from academia to government big to CVS, UPMC, Humana, big and bigger, and now in the trenches as an entrepreneur. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's a totally. Serena, there are probably few people that can that understand the nuances of that change like you, because you've done it and you've navigated it very, very successfully. I think that it's an incredibly different feeling to be, on a team of really small team after being on some really, really, really big teams where you generally don't get to know most of the folks on your team. And it just changes the way, just the energy of the day. Every hour, it's like a totally different kind of feeling.
Absolutely.
You're selling, whether you're managing, whether you're negotiating, whether you're, and it feels like there's a lot at stake in virtually every meeting, every discussion you have. When you work at a big place is going to be fine with you or without you. There are opportunities.
Sad but true.
Yeah, we have impact where we can, and we try to leave it better than where we started. You started, or when you start a really little tiny thing, then it better be better when you leave than when it started, because you started. And it really does feel like this incredible both pressure, but that pressure is a privilege. That pressure is like the opportunity that every meeting there's something on the line.
Yeah. The constant code switching half hour to half hour, I remember so well. I mean, it was, in a spreadsheet doing data analysis to being in front of a CMO at a major payer, to try to preach and evangelize what we were selling and convince them that they needed it, right? And I mean, speaking with an investor the next half hour, right? It was just, but I kind of loved it. Like, probably some undiagnosed ADHD that is tapped into with the entrepreneurship world. It's just chaos. But on the other hand, it's just so fulfilling, right? To be able to be learning and changing every 5 minutes. I mean, so for you as like a clinician leader, what I tell folks is, there are some people can navigate as a leader through all these different sizes and stages and scopes of companies. Others can't, right? Others, like, they're big company people or they're entrepreneurs or what have you. How have you changed your own style? Or maybe you haven't. Like, maybe it's been applicable in all those environments. But as a clinician leader, have you changed your style and your leadership techniques as you've gone through the journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be super intentional about that. I'd say there's certain things that I hope haven't changed, and I aspire to not have changed. One is this really, clear sense that it's the North Star doesn't deviate. And it's a North Star we learned in medical school. It's a North Star that you're constantly focused on how do you really take the best care of the people you're responsible for. And that you never, ever lose track of that as where you're going. It's liberating to have that clarity because it makes a lot of the decisions you have to make a lot easier. The other piece that I personally think about as like the most, sort of defining characteristic of the way I try to be a leader is around how the way I try to sort of foster relationships. So the people around me, I think they pretty clearly know what my North Star is, and I think there's no question about alignment on those priorities and that vision. And a sense that we are all marching in the same direction. We're doing it with camaraderie, with collaboration, through partnership, through openness, through, trying to really be part of it. A culture that sort of focuses on team and a belief that we can work better together. I think there's a lot of things you change in a bigger organization or smaller organization really around how you communicate, because the mechanisms of communication are really different. In a bigger team, a lot more it's in writing, a lot more of it's in town halls, a lot more of it's in, how you signal from afar. Whereas on a small team, a lot of it's just how do you sort of continue to stay close to and demonstrate both your care for, but also like just clarity of mission with people you're working with day in, day out. And that's a totally different set of skills and a totally different set of, the process around how you do that is just entirely different. But I don't really prefer one over the other. I think they're both like it's just a means to an end around really focusing on what that North Star remains.
Yeah, I love that. You and I could talk forever and ever. I'm sure if we planned 5 hours, we could fill it with content. But in the interest of time, some people think about legacy. Others aren't there yet, but you've had like 3, 4, 5 beautiful chapters of your career. What do you hope people remember about your contribution to healthcare when you didn't sound like you're going to stop contributing for quite a while, but if there's a storyline, a through line through all your work, what would it be?
So I feel like I've been intentional about not thinking that way. I'm kind of just trying to maintain curiosity and like say, well, if I do something different,
that's okay too. I think that's fair.
I hope that at the end of this whole thing, which I hope doesn't end anytime soon, I hope that at the end of all this, folks think that I really sort of stayed true to a vision that like I'm trying to do the right thing for the right people. And I kind of found ways to plug in different settings and kind of hopefully kept getting better as an individual. But, I don't think there's a story that I'm trying to, I have a sense of where all this goes. I don't think I ever did. I think I'm just really fired up to be part of the solution.
Yeah, I get that. You said at the very beginning, you could never have imagined, at the beginning of the journey, like the next step and the next step and the next step. I feel exactly the same. Each step in my journey has taught me new things that open the doors to the next step in the journey, right? And I wouldn't have known to get to point C without having gone to point B, and point D will only be opened up by having gotten to point C, right? So they're just stones you're putting in the river, trying to get from one side of the bank to some magical other side. I don't even know what the other side is, but like you just keep trying and you keep placing stones and eventually you get through the river, right? Which is kind of neat. So one final question for you, thinking about clinician leadership and, how we as clinicians really can contribute meaningfully to innovation and the healthcare system as it's continuing to grow and change. What would be 1 or 2 last tips you'd leave for the aspiring or current clinician leaders out there who are trying to make their mark and have impact on the healthcare world?
Just stay fired up. The truth is that like the world, this is a incredible business, healthcare. And 1 out of 6 people in the U.S. works in the healthcare industry. And it's a $4.5 trillion financial industry. And business people are making a ton of the decisions around how people get their health care. That is, I think, never going to change. The role for clinicians to be an active, central part of the decision making is not, it doesn't have to happen. Like, business people can ultimately run the show, and it's not good for patients, and it's not good for doctors, and it's not good for health if that's ultimately how it works. And I think we clinician leaders have to have some spine and some fire in the belly and some real sense of purpose to inject ourselves in as many of those key decisions as we possibly can, to build that kind of sense of partnership and trust with our business colleagues, to make sure that we are helping to create the healthcare system in the future. If we don't, we're not necessarily going to like what we get.
It's a perfect spot to end with that advice for the current, frankly, and next generations to just keep at it and keep in it and continue to have impact and a voice. So, Will Shrank, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for carving out time from your now entrepreneurial, chaotic day. Excited for the new company and what's brewing and what's coming, and just so much fun to spend a little bit of time with you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, now we need the 5-hour session.
Exactly. That'll be the next one.
I can't wait. Can't wait.
Thanks again.
What a treat.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Leadership Rounds, where clinician executives share wisdom and insights on what it means to be an exceptional leader in healthcare. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please subscribe, comment, and share with your friends and fellow leaders in healthcare. Join us next time for another dose of leadership wisdom. Until then, I'm Dr. Reena Pandey. Thanks for listening.